Hey guys, welcome to Punky's World and another genealogy video. I did want to mention that we're slowly gaining ground on 300 on this channel. Kid Missing is at 484. That means it literally needs 16 more and it will be at 500. And according to YouTube, yesterday was our 3-year anniversary. So, okay. This is naturalization record 1790 to 1990. What they are and how to use them. When I saw it, I thought it was like some kind of an index. It's not. It's a how-to. If I had read the bottom part, I would have realized that, but it's okay. And I wanted to share what I learned. I was looking for I don't think there's a copyright date on this. Yeah, there's no copyright date. I got this for $5. There's a bunch of blank pages in the back for notes. I mean a bunch. Look at this. And that is what they're for. Oh, I don't want to put that there. Let's put it underneath the clipboard. Okay. It depends on where you live, to start with. Some states had their own laws regarding naturalization. And some of these states pertain to me, and some of these states may pertain to you. Massachusetts. Okay, let me read this in order. Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Washington. So the entirety of New England, actually most of the East Coast, Ohio, and Washington State. Now, I need to look up what the Mass and Connecticut laws were because they pertain to me. The Maine laws don't pertain to me as much, even though my family's from Maine, because they were there forever and ever, amen. And who knows what naturalization looked like. You know, they were there from the beginning of the country, so there was no such thing as naturalization. But Connecticut and Massachusetts in particular, Vermont is another one that definitely pertains to me. There were people who lived here for 70 years, literally, and their children and grandchildren had served in the U.S. military. And as federal legislation changed over time, because there were several acts and bills that went through that changed the face of immigration and naturalization, they were all of a sudden enemy aliens because they were from countries that were considered enemies of ours, even though they had been here and been basically loyal citizens forever, and 2 generations of their family had fought in wars for this country. So they had to fix that. I just wrote WTF. What do you mean? And naturalization records, the way I understand it, are kept in the state court, but they're also kept federally in case they're destroyed. Like in California, you'd have to go federally to find naturalization records before 1906. Because obviously they had a giant problem in 1906. Called an earthquake that pretty much destroyed San Francisco. So I found this interesting. I don't think it's on the books anymore, but if you were an American woman and you married a man of foreign citizenship, you lost your U.S. citizenship and you became a citizen of whatever place he was from. And you could get your U.S. citizenship back only if the marriage dissolved. Really? Now, there is an index from 1981, Passengers and Immigration Lists, indexed by P. William Philby, 1981, 3 volumes. Starting in 1982, supplements were released yearly to that. Now, I want to show you or talk to you about the highlighted page here. Because these are the tips that they give. And I have to say, I'm impressed that this book is made by Heritage Quest. Not to be confused with My Heritage. Heritage Quest is a different thing. Right there. Because they're really good. We used to get the census records from them for free through the Connecticut State Library. Anyway, these were pointers that they recommend. They tell you to I'm not sure exactly on the wording of this, but it says develop a time and place sequence for the immigrant ancestor. I think that means figure out when and where they came into the country. Figure out what naturalization laws they were working under, because they changed so much in the early, late 19th and early 20th centuries. Let's see. Was there a requirement that compelled an ancestor to file a declaration or to become naturalized? Did they want to vote? Were they trying to fight in a war? Did they want to purchase land? And just go on the assumption that no standards for record keeping existed before September 27th, 1906. Again, after the big earthquake, they decided that they needed to have these records in 2 places. Seek both separate naturalization records and the regularly filed court records, which remain in case files or permanent ledger books within the court. I wonder what that means. It's easier to find naturalization records after September 27, 1906 at the state level. Okay. That's weird, because it says that if you have the petition, but you don't have, how do they word it? If you have a declaration among personal papers, it strongly suggests an ancestor never petitioned for citizenship, and I feel like there should have been some more. No, that's the next page. Loss of naturalization record due to courthouse fire may be offset by the recording of the declaration in a different county or in a federal court. Now, my problem is that, and I didn't see it addressed, when, up until a certain point, when a foreign woman married a citizen, she herself became a citizen, which means no record, as far as I can tell. I don't know whether, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm gonna have to research it. There's also a glossary in here of terms that's important, particularly terms on the papers themselves, which I have several papers. I have one family member who had been doing all the rights of a citizen. He'd been voting, he'd been doing everything. And then someone told him, you know, you're not a citizen. What do you mean I'm not a citizen? So he went to the court and applied and explained the situation. He was easily naturalized, because under the laws at that time, if you grew up here, which he did, his parents came here. I don't know if they were naturalized, and if they were, he was naturalized under his father. And I need to look for that. See if Narcisse Sr. was naturalized. And he was dumbfounded. And he wrote in his petition what had happened, how he had lived as if he were a citizen, and they just naturalized him. I have the paper where it says he's naturalized. Because back then they had laws to protect people like him, who grew up here, who always thought they were citizens. And I have talked to 2 people who've been naturalized, living people who've been naturalized. My landlord was naturalized at the age of 18, as was my friend Elmi. Which is strange, because she should have been naturalized under her father. She was a minor. As far as I know, he's naturalized, so maybe not. Maybe he's just a green card. I don't know. But I thought it was strange that she was naturalized. Anyway, on her own, because I thought her parents were naturalized. My landlord, however, his father refused to be naturalized. He stayed on a green card the rest of his life. It had to do with not so much loyalty to the Queen or whatever, because they were from Northern Ireland. It was the free medical care, the fact that his father still had family there, and that kind of stuff. So he could have been a dual citizen, but in fact, when my landlord became naturalized, his father went, "But if you need health care, you can go home. You can't do that if you're naturalized." And he said, "I live here, Dad. I was raised here from the time I can remember. Came here as a baby. This is my home." So, and in order to vote and be on boards and things like that, he had to be naturalized. So, but it's interesting talking to people who actually went through the process, the modern process, but the process, and like I said, I've had the privilege to talk to two of them. And I hope my landlord's not upset that I talked about it, but it's not a big deal. And like I said, my friend Delmy, I would have thought she would have been naturalized through her dad. Now, I do know from naturalization papers from previous ancestors that when you're naturalized, you list all your children who are under the age of 21. And you list your spouse, because they all become naturalized with you. My problem with my great-grandmother and immigration is the fact that she would have been naturalized under my great-grandfather, who was naturalized under his father. Because he was like 3 when he came here, and probably 6 when his father got naturalized. I'd have to look at the date. But and those records can be very interesting because they can contain the sponsor. Because back in those days, you had to be sponsored, and it was usually an employer or a family member that was already here. In his case, it was an employer. So, in my great-grandfather's case, great-grandfather's case. So, yeah. And what naturalization is it gives you the rights of a natural-born citizen. Now, some people choose to live as permanent residents on a green card. I would think that would be a pain in the neck because you have to go to immigration every so often and renew your green card and all of that stuff, and it's hard. It's what Roddy Piper did. He was a permanent resident, had a permanent green card, but never naturalized. He was Canadian. He didn't really have to, in the sense that he was right next door to home, But because he wasn't on a visa and he was on a permanent green card, he didn't have to go through the work visa process with, wrestling or acting. So, but he wouldn't have to do that if he was naturalized. So, I'm not sure why he chose not to be naturalized. Some people do. And some people have dual citizenship. Now, the way I understand the dual citizenship works is that the United States itself doesn't recognize it. Other countries recognize dual citizenship, such as Chris Jericho. He has dual citizenship. He was born in the United States, making him a U.S. citizen. But he was born to 2 Canadian citizens, making him a Canadian citizen. 2 passports. He said that was a pain sometimes, because one time he got on a plane, he was going through his stuff and realized he had the wrong passport with him. He had his Canadian, not his American, and all the stuff he needed. You know, his visa was based, his work visa for Japan that time was based on his American passport. Oh, so yeah, that was fun. He did manage to get the situation straightened out in Japan, but yeah, that's one of those things that and a passport is a little booklet that looks like I'm about to date myself here. The old passbooks. What is that, you ask, if you're under the age of, oh, I don't know, 45? It is a book where they used to, that would keep a record of your savings account. If you withdrew, they stamped the new number in. If you made a deposit, they stamped the new number in. And when your passbook got full, they gave you a new one. And it looks, and that's what a passport looks like. I think it's passport's slightly bigger than the passbooks. The passbook was only like this big, whereas the passport I think is about this big. And it tells you the country right on the front. Different countries have different colors on the front. Like I believe the US is blue. Canada's red. A couple of countries are red. And they have different embossed lettering on the front, depending on the country and stuff like that, and a seal of the country on the front. And you get a stamp in your passport when you go to different places. And it's sort of a record of your travels. Now, I don't know when that became a thing. But I do know after 9/11, all of a sudden you needed your passport to go to Canada and Mexico, which you never did before. You never needed a passport. So, which a lot of people said, what? They're our friends. They're our neighbors. We go in and out freely with an ID card. What's the big deal? Especially if you happen to live on those borders. Like I said, I live so close to the Canadian border. Maybe 4 hours. That routinely we have Canadian coins. Routinely. All the time. That's why if you're putting quarters in a vending machine, a washing machine, a dryer, whatever it is that takes, a game that takes quarters, or a bathroom that takes a quarter or a dime, and yes, they still exist. You have to make sure you're not putting a Canadian one in, because it won't work. And it might get stuck. One of the reasons is that the Canadian coins are a little bit thinner than our coins. Our dimes are pretty thin. And Canadian dimes are actually even thinner. Their quarters are much thinner than ours. That's the most common things you see that are Canadian in this country, where I live, because I live, like I said, maybe 4 hours from the border, is quarters. That's probably the most common. Dimes and pennies. Although they don't have pennies anymore, and we're doing away with pennies. So when you first look at it, you might think it's English because the Queen is on it, but it's actually not. So thank you so much for listening, and I will keep you updated on what I figure out about my great-grandmother, what record might be available for her, because I'm not entirely sure. God bless you, and I will see you later for the Walmart haul. In the meantime, I am going to edit these 2 videos, and so after therapy I'll only have to edit 1 video, so that'll be good. Bye guys, please subscribe. We are getting there. It's just taking more time. Happy 3rd anniversary to us, and Kid Missing, I'm blown away. 484. That's 16 away from our goal. We can do that by August 4th. Heck yeah. Bye guys. God bless you.